13 tips for beginner witches to help you learn along your journey. And just a disclaimer, this list is just suggestions that are based off of my opinion and things that I've learned along my journey. So if there is something that you don't resonate with, that's okay. Just take what you need, leave the rest for everyone else. And also, this is not a complete list, and I do plan on diving deeper into a lot of these topics in future videos. So if you think I missed something, or if you want to add to the conversation, or if you have a question about anything that I said in this video, just leave it in the comments down below, as well as like so that other people can see it. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so that you can see more videos as I bring them to you. And thank you all for your amazing support. I love you all, and without further ado, let's get started. Also, I am going to be going through my list a little quickly because I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I don't want this video to be super long. And I do have my list in front of me, so if you see me looking down, yeah, I'm just looking at my list so that I can stay on track. Tip number 1, witchcraft is a practice, not a religion. Paganism, the craft, and Wicca are all different things, but can overlap or be separate depending on the witch's personal belief system. And also, the craft is the practice of magic, using magic to create change in one's life, and it is a practice that requires skill, discipline, and knowledge in order to perfect it slowly over time. So getting your hands dirty and learning the different skills and the different principles that go into magic and practicing the craft. Tip number 2, take your time. Don't rush in and feel like you have to learn everything all at once. This is a lifelong journey of self-development and discovery, and it's important to really take your time to learn the basics and fundamentals of magic and the craft and everything that goes into it, then picking 1 or 2 topics that you want to advance in before beginning a new subject. So don't overwhelm yourself. Don't feel like you have to learn everything all at once. Just start with the basics and then slowly build on that foundation. Tip number 3, you don't need all the tools, alright? Don't fall into the trap of consumerism and aesthetics and materialism, okay? That's not what magic and the craft is really all about. Tools are meant to help you, but the tools don't have the magic themselves. The magic is already inside of you. And if you want to use tools, you know, which I have a bunch of tools myself, as you can see behind me, but it's more about what do you need for what you're trying to do, for what your intention is. If you want to use tools in your magic, just think about what it is that you're doing and how your tools are going to help you. And also realize that you can use natural items, handmade items, secondhand items, reusing and improvising with certain items or materials, and substituting when you can. Like, you know, if there's a specific herb or crystal that it says most of the time you can substitute. Sometimes you can't, but most of the time you can. But that's part of the learning process, is knowing what you can and cannot substitute with. And then also reusing things that you found around your house that you may already have, or going to a secondhand shop and picking up something for cheap. Not everything has to be pretty and shiny and brand new, and you don't need everything. If you don't feel like you're going to need it or you're not going to use it, you know, you don't have to spend your money on it. And you don't need a million tarot decks, and you don't need a cabinet full of crystals, and you don't need all the things if you're not going to actually be using them. So, and then another point I want to make is that if you don't want to use any tools, or you don't have money for tools or access or ability to make or find tools, for whatever reason that is, you can still use your imagination and the ability to visualize and create your spells or your sanctuary in your mind through meditation and sort of practicing your magic in the ethereal realm as well. Instead of having a physical space, you would have of a spiritual space, and that's another technique that I'm going to be talking about in the future. But you can practice magic without any tools. But if you want tools, don't feel like you have to spend all of your money, especially in the beginning, to get started in the craft. Tip number 4, connect with nature. Spend time in nature. Go outside and, walk through the trees, walk through a garden, look up at the stars, the sun, the moon, and all the things in nature. Spend time meditating in nature and connecting and building your relationship with nature, because nature teaches us and heals us and helps us to tap into the universal energies and awakens the magic inside of us. Find the magic inside of you and around you through nature, because nature is going to guide you and get you into the flow of the universe so that your magic can be more effective and more potent. Tip number 5, TV magic is not real, alright? That is for our entertainment and is fun to consume, but you can't throw energy balls from your hands, and you can't turn into an animal, and you can't do all this crazy TV magic stuff. Okay, that's not real magic, alright? Real magic is a subtle, invisible force of nature from within yourself and around you that allows you to create changes through cause and effect, okay? So I know that, a lot of people get interested in magic and witchcraft and things like that because they watch TV shows and movies and books, and they get this image of what it's like in their heads, but real magic isn't like that at all. That's all fantasy, and it's fun and it's enjoyable, and I enjoy it myself, but you have to realize that that's just fantasy. It's not real magic. And tip number 6, magic is neither good or bad. Magic is neutral. Good or bad is in the intention or the heart of the witch, and I'm sure we've all kind of heard this saying before, especially in the movie like The Craft and stuff, which is true in a sense that, magic in nature is neither good or bad. It's inside of the person. It's the will of the person that can be seen as good or bad. But good and bad can be sort of, depending on what your own personal beliefs, morals, and ethics, and how you view life. I mean, there is, murder is bad, okay? Hurting people is bad. But there are a lot of gray areas, and those gray areas are where, it's your intention and it's your personal goal that decides how you feel of whether or not that's good or bad, and if it's harming you or if it's harming someone else. And also knowing that the harm none, do what thou will, and the threefold law, these are Wiccan principles, and there's nothing wrong with them, but because they are Wiccan, a lot of witches are not Wiccan, so these principles may not apply to their own personal morals and ethics, and they see things in a much broader spectrum. And to also realize that the term white and black magic is a form of subtle racism, because white is implying that good magic comes from white people and bad magic comes from black people, or it's related subconsciously in that sort of way. And it's terms that were used during eras when, slaves when black people were still slaves and they would use their African culture, their native form of witchcraft, and it was like, oh, well, their witchcraft is bad because they're black and they're lesser. But then when white people do magic and they're associating white with things that are good, there is good and bad in the light and the dark. There's too much, there's such thing as too much light, and there's also things as too much dark. But the term black and white are based in the history of racism, so I would recommend not using terms like black and white. I would either say good or bad or positive or negative, but realizing that those terms are not recommended and generally not accepted in the community. And tip number 7 would be a witch is just a witch. It doesn't matter your sex, gender, identity, orientation, race, origin, beliefs, hereditary, none of that matters. At the end of the day, you just have to claim it. If you're a witch, you're a witch. It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl or how you identify or what your orientation is. None of that stuff determines if whether or not you are or not a witch. It's you actively claiming it. And you don't need titles and labels, initiations, or degrees also to be a witch. So if someone tries to tell you that you need to go to witch school in order to become a witch, or if you need to initiate yourself into this coven in order to be a witch, or those types of things, that's also not true. You don't have to do those things to be a witch, though if you want to get a more formal study and education in the topic, there's no reason why you can't. But you can also self-study and learn at your own pace and study on your own and still be just as much of a witch as someone who got a more formal education and a more, had a proper mentor or things like that. But having those things and taking that path, it doesn't matter which way you go about that. A witch is just someone who claims the power and the word witch. There's a lot of energy behind it, and it's non-discriminatory. So a witch is just a witch. Tip number 8, there are many types of witches. As many types as there are people. All are unique. Pagan witches, ceremonial witches, green witches, kitchen witches, non-secular witches, crystal witches, Christian witches, etc. These are what you would consider like a type of witch, but you don't need these titles. They're not that important in the sense of like, what kind of witch you really are. I would say don't get too attached to these titles, because if you change over time, your title may change over time, and that's okay. Maybe you want to use these titles just so that when you meet other witches or other people and you want to try and like describe your practice, that's fine. Like if you want to say, hey, I'm a kitchen witch, and you really practice kitchen witchery and things like that, that's perfectly fine. But say 10 years down the road you end up getting more into ceremonial magic and not so much as the kitchen witchery, you don't want to attach yourself too much, because then you start to limit yourself. So they're fun to have, they can be useful, but they're not something that you should hold on to it too tightly. Give yourself the freedom to grow over time. Tip number 9, solitary versus coven is kind of more of a question. It's not so much as a tip as it is, the tip would be, it doesn't matter which way you go if you decide to be a solitary practitioner or work in a group or a coven or a grove or however it is, if working with other practitioners. My tip would kind of be more in the lines of, making sure that you feel safe, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that they're not trying to, steal your identity or rip you off or take advantage of you in any kind of way, that you are comfortable with the people that you are working with and that you trust them and that you feel safe when you are working with them and that you guys have chemistry with each other and that you're aligned with your beliefs as well as agree to the rules and guidelines within that group. If you don't agree with what the group represents, it probably wouldn't work that well. I mean, why would you join a group of people that you don't agree with, all right? That you don't feel comfortable with, that you don't feel safe with, and that you don't have chemistry with, as well as, an open line of communication, a group of people that you can talk to openly about things that you've learned or want to learn, or just in general communication and being able to be like, hey, I kind of noticed this and it's kind of bothering me, and being able to express yourself openly with your group and being aware of ego power trips, watching out for leaders that are a little too culty or, just are on a big power trip and think that they're better than everybody else because they put themselves in a position of being high priest or priestess or a sense of power and domination over you. It's good to have leaders in groups, but if it doesn't feel good and if they feel like they're just wanting it to be their way and only their way and things like that, and it kind of come off as being a little cultish or something like that, and it's not comfortable, get out. And as well as mentorship, if you're a beginner witch and you join a group, making sure that they have a good mentorship program in the sense of like they're willing to teach you step by step everything that that you need to know, that they're very willing to share their wisdom with you and not hide things from you and make you feel like there's like a big barrier to entry or some crazy initiation ritual that doesn't make you feel comfortable in order to gain, knowledge. Like making sure that you agree and accept everything about this group, and also, that the group has a strong code when it comes to like commitment and accountability, that everybody's showing up, everybody's doing the thing, and it's not lazy and unintentional, and there's really no structure and flow, and just making sure that you're generally in alignment. And if you do join a group because you think it's going to be great, and like a year goes by and you're like, man, I'm just really not feeling it like I thought I would, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. You can leave the group whenever you want. And if you're in a group that tells you that you can't, then that's not healthy either. So just take your time finding your people, take your time working with others, and just making sure that you're safe and that you're comfortable and that you're not being forced to do something that you don't want to do. Tip number 10, do your research, okay? Look for credible sources, gather information from as many sources as you can with different points of view and things like that. There is no one book in witchcraft. There is not that kind of system. You have to go out and look for this information, usually on your own, unless you have a very good mentor. But, just like coming and listening to my videos or anybody else's videos on YouTube, that making sure that the information that you're gathering resonates with you, but also not afraid to listen to as many different viewpoints, read as many different books, go to and look around. Don't get too caught up in like, oh, this is my favorite author and only following one source of information. There's so much viewpoints and opinions out there, and there's a lot of stuff that is very useful that you may find in places that you wasn't expecting. So learn as much as you can and then experiment with your personal practice. Find what works with you or doesn't work, adjust, and then after you gained your experience, then you can share your wisdom with others. So, if you learned something brand new today, that doesn't make you an expert, and that doesn't put you in a position to share wisdom with others if you don't have any experience behind that wisdom, okay? That's why, it took me 17 years of practice before I decided to start sharing things with other people in a public way. Like, I talk with a lot of people about stuff in my private life, but sharing information on a public platform, I took a lot of my time doing because I wanted to make sure that I was sharing valuable content and that it was about stuff that I really knew and understand. So, yes, do your research. Okay, tip number 11 would be don't be sloppy. Alright, casting spells, circles, rituals, and ceremonies take a lot of planning and preparing and organizing to execute them well. The bigger the spell or ritual and the more people that are involved with this ritual or spell or ceremony is going to require more work and more planning to execute it. There's so much that goes behind getting these things to function properly. And so if you have to plan things out months in advance, because this is going to have a lot of people, food, dancing, music, multiple rituals and chants and song, like there's a lot that goes behind it. You want to make sure that, everything has a flow and that it feels good, all right? And that everybody has a position to participate in. And also, if it is something that's a lot to do, don't be afraid to ask for help and assign roles to others as needed to get jobs done. If you're planning something big and you're expecting 20, 30 people to show up, that's a lot of work and a lot of weight on your shoulders. So don't be afraid to be like, hey, I need help with food, I need help with drinks, I need help with firewood, I need help with getting candles, or whatever it is that you need. Be vocal, assign roles, and it'll make everything so much easier. And also, be responsible, respectful, and safe as always when it comes to casting and performing circles. Making sure that you're respecting spirits and people's personal safety and all that type of stuff. You don't want to have this big elaborate ritual or circle and have people leaving feeling uncomfortable or unfulfilled or thinking that, man, that place was just, they did not have their shit together and I'm never coming back. I did not like it. Not everybody's always going to be happy 100% of the time, but, you really want your participation to have a good energy about it, and that you want to make sure you're taking the proper steps to making sure it's an enjoyable experience and safe experience for everyone involved. Okay, so we're almost done here. Tip number 12, record your journey. Write down what you learn and do so you can see what worked and what didn't work and how you can make adjustments and improvements and see your growth in your practice and spiritual experience. It's really important, kind of like as a scientist would do, recording every little thing that they do so that it can be recreated or adjusted in the future. Like, say you create an incense blend and you use 10 different herbs and resins and oils and all this stuff, and you burned it and it was the most amazing incense that you ever had in your life, but then you completely didn't write down what you used, how much you used of it, and what your process was, and then you spend so much time trying to recreate it and you can never get it exactly like how it was because you forgot. And the same thing can go with, like, if you didn't like it, what can you change about it? What do you think it needs or doesn't need, can be substituted, and things like that. And it's not just for incense, it's for spells as well. When you cast a spell, if it worked, why did it work? If it didn't work, why didn't it work? And so you really want to make sure that you're taking the time to record everything that you're doing so that it can be recreated or adjusted as needed so that you can have more effective and potent magic. And to point out as well, you can use anything you want to record this knowledge. You can use a notebook, binder, folder, computer, journal, a big fancy book of shadows, or grimoire, or book of mirrors. It doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as you like it, as long as you can use it. Alright? Because you don't want to go out and spend $100 on this most amazing book of shadows, and then you get it and you sit down, look at it, and you're like, oh my god, I don't want to mess it up, and then you just wasted a whole bunch of money on a book that you're afraid of writing. But I do plan on going deeper into Book of Shadows in other videos on how to get your Book of Shadows to feel good and aesthetically pleasing, if going over all that stuff, because I know that Book of Shadows have a big reputation and a lot of expectation that goes behind them, but also just it's not about what it looks like, it's about how you can use it. That's the most important part, and that it feels right for you and what you do in your practice. Okay, and the last tip for today, tip number 13, protect yourself. Alright, your energy, your information, your home, your space, your magic, your mental health, etc. You want to protect yourself from unwanted vibes and energies, spirits, trolls, haters, and people that don't want to see you happy, successful, and doing well. Jealousy is such a harmful energy that, some people are aware of their energy and they purposely send that energy to you directly, and a lot of people are unaware that that energy is so, it can bring you down. If someone's jealous of you and someone is like, oh my gosh, she's so successful, she's got all of her shit together, but it triggers them and it pisses them off because it mirrors back to them everything about themselves that they don't like. And so that energy, that negativity, that jealousy, or whatever it is, gets projected onto you, and it can really affect you and your magic and your space. And so just being aware of the people that you have around you, alright, and protecting yourself from those unwanted spirits, because there are spirits around, and if you're casting circles and you're calling in spirits, if you're working with spirits, in any sort of way, you want to make sure that you are taking the proper steps when working with spirits. And there's a lot that goes into that, but protecting yourself from unwanted energy and spirits is so important, because if you don't protect yourself, you can find yourself cursed, hexed, jinxed, or just they can hinder your progress, harm you, put you into a funk, and you be trying to manifest everything, and you be wondering why your spells aren't working. And it can be simply because someone has negative, hateful energy towards you, whether you're aware of it or not. So, you want to cleanse and clear yourself and your space. You want to cut cords and remove all these negative connections. And then you want to shield and protect yourself and your space and your magical workings, so that you're not so easily penetrated by the stuff that comes towards you, that you are safe. But this doesn't just go magically, but using your common sense in the real world, as well as making sure that you're not sharing information with people that you don't know if you can trust them. Just be smart. Use common sense. Not everything is magical and mystical. There is real life dangers too. So taking caution, taking protection, and just keeping yourself safe in general, and your home and your magic and your mental health and your emotional health. And there's so much that goes into it, but just being very aware and being proactive about your safety and protecting yourself from things that are meant to do you harm. So thank you all for coming and sitting with me and joining me here in my space and listening to me talk. So like I said, if there's something that you want to add or mention, if you think I missed it, or if you have a question, leave them in the comments. And if you want to see more of me, then subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll be here for you, and you won't miss another video as it comes out. And also all the links to my website and my social medias, if you want to follow me on there, will be in the description in the bio and everything like that. So thank you all, and I will see you next time. Bye.